The council chamber floated in the emptiness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that circled the star called Viridian Prime. Inside, 300 alien species gathered in their seats, their forms ranging from creatures with too many legs to beings made entirely of light. At the center of the chamber stood Kong Day, a human diplomat wearing a simple gray suit. His black hair was touched with gray at the temples, and his dark eyes remained calm despite what was happening around him. The laughter started small. First, it came from the Keltorian section, where Ambassador Vryn sat with his green-scaled body coiled in his chair. His species looked like massive reptiles that walked upright, and they were known across the galaxy for their ability to shape plasma with their bare hands. Vryn's laugh was a hissing sound that echoed through his translator device. "Humans want a trade route?" Vryn said, his voice dripping with amusement. "The species that lives barely 100 years wants to negotiate with civilizations that have existed for millions? This is the funniest thing I have heard in centuries." More laughter joined in. The Yix delegates, beings with smooth purple skin and large heads, shared thoughts among themselves through their telepathic network. Their collective amusement felt like pressure in the air. The ancient Dravenites, insect-like creatures with bodies covered in a golden shell, clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their kind. Kong Day stood perfectly still. Behind him, seated at a smaller desk, Lee Hana gripped her datapad so hard her knuckles turned white. She was younger than Kong Day, only 28 years old, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wanted to shout at these aliens, to defend humanity. But Kong Day had told her before the meeting to stay silent, no matter what happened. "Perhaps the humans do not understand," said High Chancellor Mox, the leader of the Galactic Council. His species had ruled the Council for over 2 million years. His body looked like it was made of pieces of black crystal held together by some invisible force. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind moving through caves. "The space you wish to use for trade is contested by 7 different species. Some of them have weapons that could turn your Earth into dust in seconds. Why would we grant passage to a species that has nothing to offer?" "We offer perspective," Kong Day said quietly. The laughter grew louder. A delegate from the Threxian Empire stood up, its body shifting between solid and gaseous states. "Perspective? We have species in this council that can see through time itself. We have races that experience reality in 12 dimensions. What perspective can a species of flesh and bone possibly offer?" Kong Day did not argue. He simply nodded as if agreeing with them. This seemed to confuse some of the delegates. They had expected anger or desperate pleading. Instead, the human just stood there, watching them all with those calm, dark eyes. "Humanity has been part of this council for 5 years, Vryn continued, standing up to address the other delegates. "In that time, what have they accomplished? They have no telepathy. They cannot manipulate energy with their minds. They cannot even survive in most planetary environments without their primitive suits and helmets. They are weak, short-lived, and irrelevant. I propose we reject their request and consider removing their council membership entirely." Many delegates voiced their agreement. The chamber filled with sounds from 100 different species, all of them expressing the same sentiment. Humanity did not belong here. High Chancellor Mox raised one crystalline limb, and silence fell across the chamber. "The vote is called. All those in favor of rejecting the human trade route proposal and reviewing their council membership?" Lights appeared across the chamber as delegates voted. Green lights meant yes. Red lights meant no. The chamber glowed almost entirely green. Out of 300 species, only 12 voted red. Most of those were small species that humanity had helped with food supplies or medical aid. "The proposal is rejected," Mox declared. "Humanity's council membership will be reviewed in 6 months. This session is concluded." The delegates began to leave, many of them still laughing or sharing amused thoughts through their various forms of communication. Kang Dae gathered his materials slowly. Lee Hana came to stand beside him, her face red with anger and embarrassment. "They treated us like children," she said quietly. "Like we were nothing." "They did," Kang Dae agreed, his voice showing no emotion. "And you just stood there. You did not defend us. You did not argue." Kang Dae looked at her then, and she saw something in his eyes that made her pause. "I was not here to argue, Hana. I was here to observe." "Observe what?" "How much they hate us." "No," he said, walking toward the exit. "I observed how each species responds to problems." The Kaltorians immediately turn to aggression and displays of power. The Yiks retreat into their collective mind, seeking answers from within their network. The Dravenites rely on their ancient knowledge and refuse to consider new information. Every species here has a pattern, a way they always respond to challenges. Lee Hana followed him out of the chamber. They walked through corridors made of materials that did not exist on Earth, past windows that showed the vastness of space. "Why does that matter?" "Because patterns are predictable," Kang Dae said. "And predictable things can be understood. And things that can be understood can be addressed." They reached the docking area where the human ship waited. It was small compared to most of the vessels here, a simple transport craft that looked like a child's toy next to the massive warships and pleasure cruisers of the advanced species. But it worked, and it would take them home. As they boarded, Lee Hana asked one more question. "Do you think we will ever earn their respect?" Kang Dae sat down in the pilot's seat and began the launch sequence. Outside the window, the council chamber grew smaller as they pulled away. "Respect is not given, Hana. It is earned through actions, not words. Today, they saw us as weak. Let them. Weak things are often underestimated. And underestimated things can surprise you." The ship turned toward the jump point that would take them back to human space. Lee Hana sat in the co-pilot's seat, thinking about his words. She did not fully understand yet, but she would. Kang Dae had learned long ago that the galaxy was about to teach these advanced species a lesson about humanity. He just needed to wait for the right moment. That moment would come sooner than anyone expected. 3 weeks passed after the council meeting. Kang Dae returned to Earth and submitted his report to the human government. They were disappointed, but not surprised. Humanity had faced rejection before. Lee Hana spent her time analyzing the voting patterns and trying to find species that might support them in the future. Everything seemed to be moving along the usual path of galactic politics. Then the universe changed. The first reports came from observation posts near the galactic core. Something impossible was happening. Space itself was tearing open. Scientists called it the Void Rift, and it was growing. The rift was not like a black hole or any natural phenomenon known to any species. It was something else, something that seemed to consume not just matter and energy, but the fabric of reality itself. Within days, 3 star systems vanished. Just gone, as if they had never existed. 50 billion lives ended in silence. The Galactic Council called an emergency session, and this time, every species answered. Fear has a way of bringing people together, even people who hate each other. Kang Dae and Lee Hana arrived at the council chamber to find chaos. Delegates were shouting, some in languages their translators could not even process properly. Accusals flew back and forth. The Kaltorians blamed the Yiks for experimenting with dimensional technology. The Yiks accused the Threxians of trying to open portals to other realities. Old wars and older grudges surfaced as panic spread. High Chancellor Mox struggled to maintain order. His crystalline form glowed brighter as he tried to speak over the noise. "We must focus on solutions, not blame. Our greatest minds must work together to close this rift before more systems are lost. We have tried." Ambassador Vryn shouted back. My people fired concentrated plasma beams with enough power to destroy planets. The rift absorbed it all like it was nothing. It grew larger after we attacked it. A Yix delegate's voice echoed in everyone's mind through the translation field. Our collective consciousness attempted to understand the anomaly's nature. We found nothing. It is empty. Worse than empty. It is absence itself. The Dravenites had deployed their most advanced quantum stabilizers, technology millions of years old. The devices had exploded the moment they got close to the rift. The ancient species who had seen the birth and death of galaxies admitted they had no idea what they were dealing with. Kong Day sat in the human observer section, watching and listening. Li Hana sat beside him, her face pale as she processed the data coming through her pad. Day, the rift is accelerating. If it continues at this rate, it will reach the outer colonies in 2 months. Earth is in its projected path within 6 months. He nodded slowly, but said nothing. His eyes moved from speaker to speaker, watching how each species responded to the crisis. The patterns he had observed before were even clearer now. When threatened, the powerful species defaulted to their strengths. The Keltorians wanted to attack it. The Yix wanted to understand it through telepathy. The Dravenites searched their ancient databases for similar events. None of it was working. Perhaps this is a weapon, Vryn said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Perhaps one of the younger species created this, trying to gain power. We should investigate them first. His eyes turned toward the human section. Kong Day felt the weight of 300 species looking at him. Li Hana tensed beside him, ready to defend their innocence. But Kong Day just smiled slightly and shook his head. He knew they would blame humanity. It was easier than admitting they were helpless. Humans do not have the technology to create such a thing, High Chancellor Mock said. We all know this. Vryn, your fear is making you irrational. The Keltorian diplomat hissed in anger, but sat down. The council continued its arguments, going in circles. Hours passed. No solutions emerged. The rift continued to grow, and more systems fell into its emptiness. Kong Day raised his hand. It was a small gesture, easily missed in the chaos of the chamber. Li Hana saw it, and her eyes went wide. Day, what are you doing? Requesting to speak, he said calmly. They will never let you. Humans are observers, not voting members. We have no voice in emergency sessions. Then make them hear me anyway. Li Hana looked at her data pad, then at him, then back at the pad. She was a skilled technician, and she had spent weeks learning the Council's communication systems. If she wanted to, she could override the speaker controls. It would be against protocol. It might get them thrown out of the Council permanently. But as she looked at the chaos around them and thought about the rift consuming everything in its path, she made her decision. Her fingers moved across the pad. A moment later, Kong Day's voice came through every speaker in the chamber. Honorable delegates, I request permission to speak. The chamber fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the human section. High Chancellor Mox's form flickered with what might have been surprise or anger. Observer Kong Day, you do not have speaking rights in emergency sessions. I know, Kong Day said, standing up. But I have an idea that might save us all. Will you hear me, or will pride kill billions more? Vryn laughed, that same hissing sound from before. The human has an idea? The species that could not even win approval for a simple trade route thinks it can solve a problem it has defeated the greatest minds in the galaxy? Yes, Kong Day said simply. Because my species looks at problems differently than yours. This should be entertaining, Vryn said. Very well, human. Share your brilliant idea. Show us all how inferior species solve impossible problems. Kong Day walked down to the center of the chamber. Li Hana sent data from her pad to the central display, and images of the rift appeared for everyone to see. Kang De pointed at the patterns of its growth. You have all tried to fight the rift with your greatest strengths. The Keltorians used plasma manipulation. The Yiks used telepathy. The Dravenites used quantum technology. Every attempt made the rift stronger. Have you asked yourselves why? It is more powerful than us, a Threxian delegate said. Obviously. No, Kang De said. It is not about power. Look at the data. Every time a psychically strong species interacts with it, the rift grows faster. Every time someone uses energy manipulation near it, it expands. The rift is not overpowering you. It is feeding on you. Silence filled the chamber as delegates processed this. Mox leaned forward. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that your greatest strengths are exactly what the rift wants. It consumes consciousness, psychic energy, advanced technology. You are giving it exactly what it needs to grow. Kang De paused, letting that sink in. But humanity has none of those things. We are, as you all like to remind us, weak and primitive. We cannot manipulate energy with our minds. We have almost no psychic presence. To the rift, we are nearly invisible. So what? Vryn demanded. You want us to do nothing? Just watch as it consumes everything? No, Kang De said. I want you to let humans try. Form a task force led by my people. Give us access to the best resources and data you have. Let us approach this problem not with psychic power or energy manipulation, but with the one thing humans do better than anyone else. And what is that? Mox asked. Kang De smiled. We build tools. We adapt. We improvise. We find ways to win when we should lose. It is all we have ever done. The chamber erupted in argument again. Some delegates thought it was worth trying. Others called it insane to trust humanity with something so important. Vryn declared it would be the end of the galaxy if they followed a human plan. But desperation has a way of making impossible decisions possible. After hours of debate, High Chancellor Mox called for a vote. Humanity will be given 72 hours to present a solution. If they fail, we return to our own methods. All in favor? This time, the vote was much closer. But it passed. Barely. Kang De bowed to the council and left the chamber with Liana. As they walked back to their ship, she asked, Do you really have a plan? The beginning of one, he said. Now we need to put together a team and hope that being underestimated one more time will save us all. The human research station Prometheus hung in space near the edge of the Void Rift's expansion zone. It was not impressive to look at, just a collection of modules connected by tubes and covered in solar panels. But inside those modules, some of the best human minds in the galaxy were working against a countdown that meant life or death for billions. Kang De stood in the main laboratory, watching Cho Mina work. She was a small woman with tired eyes and hair pulled back in a messy knot. She had not slept in 2 days. Her hands moved across holographic displays, showing data about the rift. Equations that made no sense to most people, but were perfectly clear to her. It is conscious, she said suddenly, making everyone in the lab stop what they were doing. Not conscious like we are conscious, but it responds to consciousness. It is attracted to it like a magnet attracts metal. Commander Beak Su stood near the window, looking out at the distant rift. It looked like a wound in space, a place where stars should be, but were not. He was a military man, tall and strong, with gray hair cut short. Can you explain that in simple terms? Cho Mina rubbed her eyes. Every species the Galactic Council sent to fight the rift has powerful psychic abilities, or can manipulate energy with their minds. Those abilities create a kind of signature, a presence that the rift can detect. When they use their powers near it, the rift does not just absorb the energy. It absorbs the consciousness behind it. That is why it grows stronger each time. They are literally feeding it with their minds. But humans have weak psychic presence, Liana said, understanding dawning on her face. We are almost invisible to it. Exactly, Chomina said. The rift is hungry for powerful minds and strong energy signatures. We are like insects to it. Too small to notice, too weak to bother with. Kang Day smiled. It was the first time anyone had seen him truly smile since the crisis began. Our weakness is our strength. The galaxy has spent weeks trying to overpower the rift. We are going to sneak past it instead. Yoon Ji-wan, the station's head engineer, looked up from his workstation. He was young, barely 30, but his designs had saved human colonies more than once. If we cannot fight it with energy or psychic power, we need to build something mechanical. Something that works on pure physics, no consciousness involved. Can we do that? Biksu asked. Can we build something that affects the rift without using energy manipulation? We can try, Yoon Ji-wan said. He pulled up new displays, showing designs that looked like small drones. These are silent drones. Minimal energy signatures. They work on mechanical principles, using harmonic frequencies based on mathematical constants. No psychic component, no energy manipulation. Just mathematics and physics. Chomina studied the designs. You want to create a resonance cage. Surround the rift with drones that emit specific frequencies. The rift would not detect them as threats or food because they have no consciousness behind them. Will it work? Kang Day asked. I have no idea, Chomina admitted. This has never been tried, but it is the only thing I can think of that might actually work. Everything else just makes it stronger. They had 60 hours left of their 72-hour deadline. Kang Day made the decision quickly. Build them. Build as many as we can. Commander Biksu, I need ships ready to deploy these drones. Li Hana, send a message to Earth. We need every available vessel here within 48 hours. The station became a storm of activity. Engineers worked around the clock building drones. Manufacturers on Earth and human colonies shifted to emergency production. Ships began arriving, small human vessels that looked like toys next to alien warships, but were fast and reliable. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Vryn was making speeches about human failure. Their time is almost up, he told other delegates. When they fail, we must take stronger action. Perhaps combine all our powers at once. A unified strike. Some delegates agreed with him. Others were less certain. High Chancellor Mox said nothing, just watched and waited at the Prometheus station. Kang Day gathered his team in the briefing room. Chomina, Yoon Ji-wan, Commander Biksu, Li Hana, and Park Hyen, the best pilot in the human fleet. Park Hyen was quiet and serious, with sharp eyes that never stopped moving. She had flown through asteroid fields and solar storms. She was the person you wanted when things went wrong. G. The plan is simple, Kang Day said, showing them a holographic model of the rift surrounded by thousands of small dots representing drones. We deploy the drones in a geometric pattern around the rift. They emit harmonic frequencies that create a resonance cage. If Chomina's theory is correct, the cage will not feed the rift because there is no consciousness behind it. The rift will stop expanding. And if she is wrong? Park Hyen asked. Then we all die, Kang Day said simply. Along with everyone else in the galaxy eventually. Park Hyen nodded as if this was an acceptable answer. What is my part? Kang Day's expression became more serious. Once the cage is in place, we need to collapse the rift. That requires getting compression charges into its outer layer. The charges will force it to implode on itself. But someone needs to fly them in manually. The rift's gravity is too unstable for remote guidance. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what he was saying. It was a suicide mission. Whoever flew those charges in would not be coming back. I will do it, Park Hyon said immediately. I need a squadron, Kang Dae said. 3 ships. Better chance of at least one getting through. 2 other pilots volunteered immediately. Kang Dae looked at them, these humans who were willing to die to save a galaxy that had mocked them, and felt something tight in his chest. There is one more thing, Liana said quietly. I have been working on something. A remote retrieval system. If we time it perfectly, we might be able to pull the pilots out after they deploy the charges, but before the rift collapses. Might? Commander Biksu asked. Might, Liana confirmed. I have never tested it. There is no guarantee it will work. But it is a chance. Park Hyon smiled. A chance is better than nothing. The 72 hours passed. Human ships gathered near the rift, forming a perimeter. The Galactic Council sent observers to watch what they expected would be a spectacular failure. Ambassador Vryn came personally, his ship staying at a safe distance. Kang Dae stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the countdown. Beside him, Li Hana monitored the drone systems. Commander Biksu coordinated the fleet. Chomina double-checked her calculations one last time. Launch drones, Kang Dae ordered. Thousands of small drones shot out from the human ships. They moved in perfect formation, taking positions around the rift based on mathematical calculations. The pattern they formed was beautiful, a geometric shape that existed only because humans had built it piece by piece. The drones began emitting their frequencies. For a moment, nothing happened. The rift continued to expand, swallowing space. Vryn's voice came over the communication channel. I told you they would fail. This is a waste of time. Then the rift stopped growing. Not slowly, not gradually. It just stopped, frozen in place as if hitting an invisible wall dot in the council chamber light years away. Delegates stared at their screens in disbelief. The rift that had defeated every advanced species in the galaxy had been stopped by mechanical drones built by humans. Phase 2, Kang Dae said quietly. Park Hyon, you are clear to proceed. Park Hyon's voice came back calm and steady. Understood. Beginning approach. 3 human ships broke formation and flew toward the rift. They were small and fast, carrying compression charges that weighed almost as much as the ships themselves. Park Hyon led the way, her hands steady on the controls as gravity tried to tear her ship apart. The galaxy watched as 3 humans flew straight into the mouth of oblivion. Carrying the hope of billions with them, Park Hyon's ship shook violently as it approached the outer edge of the void rift. Her instruments screamed warnings at her, telling her that gravity was wrong here, that space itself was broken. She ignored them. Behind her, 2 other human pilots followed in perfect formation. They had trained together for 2 days, learning to fly as one unit. It was not much time, but humans learned fast when they had to. Compression charges armed, Park Hyon reported, her voice steady despite the way her ship was being pulled in 3 different directions at once. 30 seconds to deployment point. On the lead command ship, Kang Dae watched the display showing the 3 ships as small dots moving toward the rift. The entire fleet held its breath. Across the galaxy, billions watched on their screens. In the Galactic Council chamber, delegates who had laughed at humanity 3 weeks ago now sat in complete silence. Ambassador Vryn stood near his observation window, his green scales reflecting the light from distant stars. He had been so certain the humans would fail. His entire speech was prepared, the one where he would demand humanity be expelled from the council for wasting everyone's time during a crisis. But the rift had stopped expanding. The impossible had already happened once. Could it happen again? 20 seconds, Park Hyon said. Her ship crossed into the rift's outer layer, and reality became strange. She could see her hands on the controls, but they also seemed to be somewhere else, doing something else. Time felt wrong, moving too fast and too slow at the same moment. This is very weird, she muttered. Despite everything, Kang Dae smiled. Even facing death in a place where physics did not work properly, Park Hyon remained herself. Deploy on my mark, Park Hyon ordered the other two pilots. 3, 2, 1, mark. All three ships released their compression charges at the same instant. The devices fell into the rift, pulled by its gravity into the heart of the anomaly. They would take 90 seconds to reach the proper depth, and then they would detonate, creating a cascade that would force the rift to collapse inward on itself. But those 90 seconds felt like forever. Charges deployed, Park Hyon reported. Beginning retreat. But retreating from the rift was harder than approaching it. The gravity pulled at them, trying to drag them deeper. Park Hyon pushed her engines to maximum, feeling the ship groan under the stress. One of the other pilots, a man named Kin Tae, reported that his engine was overheating. The third pilot, Oh Sira, told him to keep flying anyway. 60 seconds to detonation, Lee Hana said from the command ship. Her hands moved across her controls, preparing the retrieval system she had built. It had never been tested. She had no idea if it would work, but she had to try. Ambassador Vryn watched the human ship struggling to escape the rift's pull. Part of him, the part that had spent years looking down on humanity, expected them to fail now. They had stopped the rift, which was impressive, but dying in the process would prove they were still inferior. The superior species would have survived, but another part of him, a part he did not want to acknowledge, felt something different. Respect, perhaps, or shame. These humans had volunteered for a suicide mission without hesitation. They had flown into death itself to save a galaxy that had mocked them. When was the last time a Keltorian had shown such courage? 40 seconds to detonation, Lee Hana announced. She could see the ships on her display, see them fighting against impossible odds. Come on, she whispered. Come on. Kang Dae stood perfectly still, watching. Commander Beek Su had his hand on the communication console, ready to issue orders if needed. Cho Mina stared at her calculations, double-checking them for the 100th time. Yoon Ji-wan monitored the compression charges, making sure they would detonate at exactly the right moment. 30 seconds, Lee Hana said. Activating retrieval system. She pressed the control, and every human ship in the fleet fired specially designed tether beams toward the three ships near the rift. The beams were not made of energy or psychic power. They were made of compressed magnetic fields, purely mechanical constructs that the rift could not feed on. The beams reached Park Hyon's ship first. She felt a sudden pull, different from the rift's gravity. This pull was trying to save her, not kill her. I feel something, she reported. It is working. 20 seconds, Lee Hana counted. The tether beams locked onto all three ships. The entire fleet began pulling backward, away from the rift. Trying to drag the three pilots to safety. Kim Tae's ship was damaged, its engine nearly dead. The tether beam was not strong enough to pull him free alone. But Oh Sira changed her course, using her ship's momentum to push against his. Together, linked by the tether beams, the three ships began to move away from the rift. 10 seconds, Lee Hana said. She could barely watch. 9, 8, 7. Park Hyon pushed her engines beyond their safety limits. The ship screamed in protest, but she did not care. She was getting her squadron out. All of them. Not just herself. 3, 2, 1. The compression charges detonated deep inside the void rift. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself seemed to bend inward. The rift, which had been expanding for weeks, suddenly reversed. It pulled inward, collapsing on itself, consuming its own mass. The shockwave hit Park Hyun's squadron like a wall. Their ships tumbled through space, pulled by the tether beams and pushed by the shockwave. It was chaos, a moment where everything could go wrong. But the human fleet held their position. Pulling with all their strength, Park Hyun's ship cleared the danger zone first, followed by Osiris. Kim Tae's damaged ship came last, spinning wildly but intact. The tether beams guided them back to the fleet, and recovery crews rushed to meet them. Behind them, the void rift collapsed completely. The wound in space sealed itself, leaving only normal empty space where the anomaly had been. Stars that had been hidden behind it became visible again. The galaxy was saved. For a long moment, no one spoke. The human fleet stared at their screens, barely believing what they had done. In the Galactic Council chamber, delegates sat in stunned silence. Ambassador Vryn looked at his own hands, his plasma-shaping abilities that had seemed so powerful, and realized they had been useless. Worse than useless. They had made things worse. But these humans, these weak, short-lived creatures with no special powers, had solved the unsolvable problem. They had done it with mathematics, with mechanical drones, with courage, and with a willingness to sacrifice themselves. High Chancellor Mox was the first to speak, his voice resonating through the council chamber and transmitted to every watching species. The void rift is closed. Humanity has saved us all. On the command ship, Kong Dae allowed himself to sit down. His legs suddenly felt weak. Lee Hana was crying, tears running down her face as she laughed with relief. Commander Beek-Su was on the communication system, coordinating recovery efforts. Chomena had her head in her hands, exhausted beyond words. Park Hyun's voice came over the communication channel. Command, this is Park Hyun. My ship is damaged, but we are all alive. Requesting permission to come aboard. Permission granted, Kong Dae said. And Park Hyun? Yes, sir. Well done. The recovery took hours. The 3 pilots were pulled aboard the command ship and immediately surrounded by medical teams and celebrating crew members. Park Hyun was bruised and exhausted, but she smiled when she saw Kong Dae. Did we do it? She asked. Did we really close it? You did it, Kong Dae confirmed. You saved the galaxy. Park Hyun nodded, then promptly fell asleep standing up. The medical team caught her and took her to the medical bay. Messages began arriving from across the galaxy. Species that had ignored humanity now wanted to talk. The Yix Collective sent thoughts of gratitude. The Dravenites transmitted ancient blessings. Even some Keltorians sent messages of respect. Though Vryn was not among them yet, Kong Dae read each message, but his mind was already moving forward. The crisis was over, but something had changed. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do. The question now was what would come next. Lee Hana came to stand beside him. They are calling you a hero, she said. They want you to address the council. I am not a hero, Kong Dae said quietly. I just asked the right questions and trusted the right people. That is what good leaders do, Lee Hana said. Kong Dae looked out at the stars, at the space where the rift had been. Then let us hope I can continue to be a good leader, because the hard part is not over. We stopped the rift. Now we need to change how the galaxy thinks. That will be much harder than closing a hole in space. 3 months after the void rift closed, Kong Dae returned to the Galactic Council chamber. This time, he did not stand alone at the center. He walked in with Park Hyun, who still had a slight limp from her injuries. Behind them came Chomena, Yoon Ji-won, Commander Beek-Su, and Lee Hana. The people who had saved the galaxy deserved to be seen. The chamber looked the same as before. The same metal and glass ring floating in space. But everything felt different. When Kong Day entered, delegates stood up. Not all of them, not yet, but enough that it was noticeable. The Yix Collective sent a wave of respectful greeting that everyone could feel through the translation field. Several smaller species actually applauded, a gesture they had learned from humans. Ambassador Vryn remained seated, but his posture was different. The arrogance was gone. He looked tired and older somehow, though only 3 months had passed. High Chancellor Mox called the session to order. His crystalline form glowed brighter than usual. This session is called to honor humanity and to discuss their future role in the Galactic Council. But first, I wish to formally thank Kong Day and his team for saving countless lives. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement. Kong Day bowed slightly, but said nothing yet. He had learned that sometimes silence was more powerful than words. In recognition of their service, Mox continued, I propose that humanity be granted full voting membership in the Galactic Council, effective immediately. Furthermore, I propose that Kong Day be offered a seat in the inner chamber, making him one of the 6 beings who guide council policy. The chamber erupted in discussion. The inner chamber had only 6 seats, reserved for the oldest and most powerful species. No species younger than 10 million years had ever been offered such a position. It was unprecedented. Many delegates supported the idea. The rift had changed minds. Species that had mocked humanity now saw them as valuable allies. But some delegates, particularly among the older species, were uncomfortable. Humanity was still young, still learning. Did they deserve such power? Kong Day raised his hand, asking for permission to speak. Mox granted it immediately. I am honored by this offer, Kong Day said, his voice calm and clear. But I must decline. Silence fell across the chamber. Even Mox seemed surprised, his crystalline form flickering. You decline? Mox asked. May I ask why? Because taking that seat would solve nothing, Kong Day said. He walked to the center of the chamber, where everyone could see him clearly. You offer me this position because humans saved you from the rift. But why did the rift become such a threat in the first place? No one answered. Kong Day continued. It became a threat because every species tried to fight it with their greatest strengths. The powerful species assumed their power would solve the problem. They did not consider that sometimes power makes things worse. They did not listen to alternatives. They did not think to ask for help from those they considered inferior. Ambassador Vryn shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Other delegates did the same. If I take a seat in the inner chamber, Kong Day said, I become part of that same system. A system where the oldest and strongest species make decisions for everyone else. A system that assumes age and power equal wisdom. The rift proved that assumption wrong. Cho Mina watched from the side, a small smile on her face. She had heard Kong Day practice this speech on the journey here. Lee Hanna stood straight and proud, knowing what was coming next. Instead, Kong Day said, I propose something different. I propose we create a galactic academy where all species, regardless of age or power, can share knowledge equally. Where the Yix can teach their telepathy, where the Keltorians can demonstrate plasma shaping, where the Dravenites can share their ancient history, but also where humans can teach problem-solving, where younger species can present new ideas, where everyone has a voice. He paused, letting the idea sink in. The rift taught us that different perspectives have value, that sometimes the solution comes from unexpected places. If we want to prevent future crises, we need to stop assuming we already know everything. We need to learn from each other, not just from those we consider superior. A Yix delegate's thoughts echoed in the chamber. This is a radical proposal. It would change the fundamental structure of how knowledge is shared in the galaxy. Yes, Kong Day agreed. That is exactly the point. High Chancellor Mox considered for a long moment. Then he did something unusual. He laughed. It sounded like wind chimes in a storm, beautiful and strange. When you first came to this chamber, Mox said, I thought you were foolish. I thought humanity had nothing to offer. I see now that I was the fool. Your proposal has merit. I support it. The vote took ours. Many delegates supported the Academy immediately. Others needed convincing. Some worried about the cost, about the logistics, about changing traditions that had existed for millions of years. But slowly, minds changed. Species that had worked with humans during the Rift Crisis spoke about their experiences. The Yiks shared their collective conclusion that diversity of thought prevented blind spots. Even some Dravenites admitted that their ancient knowledge had gaps. In the end, the vote passed. Not unanimously, but by a strong majority. The Galactic Academy would be built. As the session ended, Ambassador Vryn approached Kong Day. The human turned to face the Keltorian, unsure what to expect. I owe you an apology, Vryn said quietly. His translator made the words sound formal, but there was genuine emotion behind them. I mocked your species. I called you weak and irrelevant. I was wrong. You are not entirely wrong, Kong Day said. We are weak in many ways. We have no telepathy, no energy manipulation. We live short lives. These things are true, but you are strong in ways I did not understand, Vryn continued. Ways my species has forgotten. We Keltorians have relied on our plasma shaping for so long that we stopped learning other skills. We became arrogant. The rift humbled us. Humility is a hard lesson, Kong Day said, but a valuable one. Vryn nodded. Then he did something that shocked everyone watching. He bowed to Kong Day, a deep formal bow that in Keltorian culture indicated respect for a superior. When the academy opens, Vryn said, I would like to be among the first students. I have much to learn. Kang Day returned the bow. You will be welcome. The months that followed were busy. A terraformed moon was chosen for the academy, a beautiful place with blue oceans and green continents. Construction began immediately, with hundreds of species contributing. The buildings were designed to accommodate every type of life, from beings that breathed methane to creatures that lived in pure energy. Li Hana became the Academy's first administrator, coordinating with species across the galaxy. Cho Mina agreed to teach astrophysics and theoretical mathematics. Yoon Ji-won would run the engineering department. Commander Beek-Su retired from the military to develop the logistics and operational systems. Park Hyen was offered a position teaching flight dynamics and tactical thinking. She accepted on the condition that she could still fly sometimes. Teaching is good, she said, but I need the sky. The first class of students arrived on a bright morning. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species walked through the academy gates. Young Keltorians eager to learn human engineering. Yiks individuals who wanted to understand non-telepathic problem-solving. Dravenites curious about how younger species thought. And humans, lots of humans, excited to learn from alien teachers. Kang Day stood at the entrance, greeting students as they arrived. An elderly Dravenite approached him, her golden shell marked with age patterns that indicated she was over 3 million years old. I have lived a long time, she said. I thought I had seen everything worth seeing. But this is new. Thank you for creating something new. I just suggested it, Kong Day said. Everyone else built it. You are too modest, the Dravenite said. But I suppose that is part of why this works. Ambassador Vryn arrived with a group of young Keltorians. They looked around the academy with wide eyes, taking in the mixture of architectural styles, the students from dozens of species talking and laughing together. It was chaotic and loud and completely unlike the formal, structured environments they were used to. "Is it always this noisy?" one young Cultorian asked. "I hope so," Kang Day said with a smile. "Noise means people are talking. Talking means ideas are being shared. That is what we are here for." The opening ceremony was simple. High Chancellor Mox gave a short speech about the importance of learning and growth. A Yix elder shared thoughts about the beauty of diverse perspectives. A human philosopher talked about curiosity and humility. Then everyone went to their first classes. Kang Day taught the first class himself. It was a mixed group: humans, Keltorians, Yix, Dravenites, and a dozen other species. He stood at the front of the room, looking at all these different beings who had come to learn. "Welcome," he said. "This is a class about problem solving. But before we talk about solving problems, I want to ask you all a question. What is the most important thing we need to solve any problem?" A human student raised their hand. "Knowledge?" "Good answer," Kang Day said. "But not quite what I am looking for." A Yix student shared a thought. "Intelligence?" "Also good, but still not it." Ambassador Vryn, sitting in the back of the classroom, spoke up. "The willingness to admit we might be wrong?" Kang Day smiled. "Yes, exactly. The most important thing we need to solve problems is the willingness to admit we do not have all the answers. The moment we think we know everything, we stop learning. And the moment we stop learning, we become vulnerable." He pulled up images of the Void Rift, showing how it had grown and how it was eventually stopped. This crisis happened because the most powerful species in the galaxy assumed their power would solve everything. It did not. The solution came from a species everyone considered weak. But here is the important part. We were not special. We just looked at the problem differently. Any of you could do the same if you are willing to question your assumptions. The class discussed the rift for hours. Students shared their perspectives. Arguments happened. Ideas clashed and merged. It was messy and uncertain and absolutely perfect. That evening, Kang Day walked through the academy grounds with Li Hana. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that no Earth sunset could match. "Do you think it will last?" Li Hana asked. "This change we started?" "I do not know," Kang Day admitted. "Old habits are hard to break. Some species will return to their old ways. Some will resist change. But enough minds have been opened. Enough people have seen that there is a better way. That will spread slowly, but it will spread." "The galaxy will never be the same," Li Hana said. "No," Kang Day agreed. "It will not. And that is good. Same is comfortable, but different is how we grow." 10 years passed. The Galactic Academy became one of the most respected institutions in the galaxy. Mixed species research teams made discoveries that pure species teams never could have achieved. Technologies from different cultures merged in unexpected ways. The Keltorians learned human adaptability and became better problem solvers. Humans learned Yix telepathic principles and developed better communication technologies. The Dravenites shared their ancient wisdom while learning new perspectives from younger species. Political changes followed educational ones. More younger species gained voting rights in the Galactic Council. The inner chamber expanded from 6 seats to 12, including representatives from species less than 1,000,000 years old. Ambassador Vryn became one of the strongest advocates for these changes. Using his influence among the older species to push for reform, Kang Day eventually retired from teaching, though he remained connected to the academy as an advisor. He returned to Earth, to a small house near the ocean where he could think and rest. But students still visited him, sometimes dozens at a time, wanting to hear his stories and ask his advice. Li Hana became the academy's chancellor. guiding its growth and ensuring it stayed true to its founding principles. Park Hyo-yeon trained thousands of pilots and became a legend in her own right. Cho Mina won 3 major scientific awards for her work on dimensional mechanics. Commander Beek-soo wrote a book on logistics and cooperation that became required reading at the academy. One day, a young human diplomat came to visit Kang-dae. Her name was Song Minji, and she had just been assigned to the Galactic Council. It was her first major assignment, and she was nervous. "They say you changed the galaxy," Minji said, sitting across from Kang-dae on his porch overlooking the ocean. "How did you do it?" Kang-dae thought for a long moment, watching the waves roll in. "I did not change the galaxy," he finally said. "The galaxy changed itself. I just reminded everyone that change was possible. That being different was not the same as being wrong. That weakness and strength are not always what they seem." "But how do I do that?" Minji asked. "How do I make them listen?" "You earn their respect," Kang-dae said. "Not by being the strongest or the smartest. Not by having the best weapons or the most advanced technology. You earn respect by being consistent, by being honest, by solving problems that need solving, and by treating everyone with dignity, even when they do not treat you the same way." Minji nodded, absorbing his words. "And remember," Kang-dae added, "you are not alone. You have the support of hundreds of species now. Species that learn to see humans differently. Stand on those relationships. Build on them. That is how change spreads, one relationship at a time." Minji thanked him and left, carrying his advice back to the council. Kang-dae watched her go, thinking about how young she looked, how uncertain. But he had been the same once. They all had been taught change was never easy, but it was always possible. The Void Rift had taught the galaxy that lesson. Not through destruction, but through salvation. Not through power, but through cooperation. And that lesson, once learned, could never be completely forgotten. The galaxy would stumble sometimes. Old prejudices would resurface. New crises would test them. But they had learned something fundamental, that diversity was strength, that different perspectives had value, that the solution to any problem might come from anywhere, and it had all started because one human diplomat refused to be silenced, refused to accept that humanity had nothing to offer, and refused to believe that weakness was the same as worthlessness. The mocking had stopped long ago. Now, when species spoke of humanity, they spoke with respect, not because humans had become more powerful, but because they had shown the galaxy a different kind of strength.